Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. We take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, we'll be reviewing the class supplement, Kyrie's Mystic Tome of Magical Girls, designed by John Sanders for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or on my submission form at roguewatson.com. If you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. I apologize if I sound a little congested and flubbing my words a little more than normal. I managed to catch COVID for Christmas. Yay! Happy holidays! I am thankfully vaxxed and boosted, so it was a pretty mild case, just kind of have some congestion, but gotta get that out of the way because I'm sure I don't sound quite 100% like I was hoping I would. I'm recording this review, and this review deserves better because I think this is a really fantastic supplement. So I'm not necessarily the biggest anime fan or the most knowledgeable about the genre, but I I've been a lifelong gaming fan, and I really enjoy JRPGs. I finally played and finished Persona 5 last year and thought that was just a magnificent game. So certainly I know a lot of the tropes and cliches and characters and all that, and the concept of the magical girl is, I guess Sailor Moon would maybe be the best example of that, but kind of normal girls who can transform, and it's the power of friendship and all that fun stuff. I guess She-Ra in a way. I do like the She-Ra, that new one on Netflix, which I could highly recommend. It's super queer and super awesome, like very well written and well paced and really fun characters. She's kind of a magical girl in that one because she transforms via her sword. So what this supplement provides is an entirely new class based on this magical girl archetype of anime. But that's not all. It also provides 5 subclasses for that class. But that's not all. It also provides 5 subclasses for existing classes, which is interesting because a lot of times my complaint with new classes in 5e is like, well, why couldn't this just be a subclass? Because the subclass thing exists. We have so many classes already. You know, why couldn't we just mold these certain things onto other subclasses? The designer went and did that, which I love. But that's not all. We also get new feats, new magic items, new spells, and several stat blocks based on these magical girls. Holy crap. If you wanted to, talk about a comprehensive amount of content for your concept, that is a gigantic a thumbs up, just like everything I could possibly ask for when it came to this entire design. So the main thing we need to look at, of course, is the new class, which is the magical girl. The magical girl is kind of a weakling. Normally, you have a d6 hit die, which puts you down there with the wizards and sorcerers, essentially, and you are a primary spellcaster. So you get spellcasting right off the bat at first level, and you get all the way up to 9th level spells when you get to tier 4. Also, like I believe wizards, sorcerers, and clerics, there may be more, you choose your subclass right at first level. So right when you become a magical girl or you create one, that's when you decide what kind you actually are. And that's important because a big feature of the class is your transformation. You're becoming, by the power of Grayskull or whatever She-Ra says, in order to transform, and then each of those subclasses, different things happen, and they gain different buffs and abilities whenever they transform. So you get that right at first level, then you'll get different abilities as you level up. And then the other important thing is you gain a magic, and that's called the Magical Promise, is the subclass. The Magical Incantation, which is kind of like the Paladin's aura that they get at like 6th level, I think it is, where you can activate some aura that is in a 30-foot radius, or I think it's a 10-foot radius around the Paladin, eventually becomes 30 feet. In this case, you create a magic circle that starts at where you are, but you actually put it on the ground. It doesn't go with you. In fact, that's something that happens, I think, when you level up high enough, I believe, then it starts moving with you. And it can do, and you actually pick different incantations, kind of like I don't know, like a Warlock Invocation or something like that, where you can pick and choose your own different abilities, and they include just various cool effects, like just adding damage or inflicting bane on enemies, increasing speed for your allies, granting temporary hit points and that kind of thing. And they scale. It's odd that you actually start with a 10-foot, although I don't think you get this magical incantation feature until 3rd level, even though it's listed from 1st level. But it starts out at 10 feet and it actually scales up 15, 20, 25, and then to 30 feet at the end. So it's a cool effect, but that's in addition to all the other things that you can actually do. So it's easy to kind of forget about that. So the main thing we're going to look at are the subclasses, which there are 5: the Dark Magical Girl, the Heart Seeker, the Magical Warrior, the Star Seeker, and the Starlight Idol. And a good reference when creating subclasses is to kind of create soft multi-classes. So you look at a lot of existing classes or archetypes and figure out, okay, how can I make this, my new class, fit those kind of molds? And this very much follows that vein. So like the Starlight Idol is, what if we subclass into Bard a little bit? The Magical Warrior is obviously a fighter. The Heart, is it Heart Seeker? No, Star Seeker is like more wizardy. The Heart Seeker and Dark Magical, I guess Heart Seeker is kind of a cleric. You have a lot of healing spell. And by the way, you get kind of spell lists sort of similar to the Host Player's Handbook sorcerer subclasses. And then I guess the cleric domains as well also give you their own spell lists, and then extra features and things that happen when you transform. So it might be that like the Heartseeker, you basically gain the ability to calm emotions, and you gain better healing abilities with our healing spells. The Dark Magical Girl, you actually get kind of a super powered form where you can gain a powerful weapon and better armor class, and you just get a lot of really useful offensive, like crowd controlling spells. The Magical Warrior, you get a lot of kind of paladin spells, and you become kind of an Eldritch Knight, I think, when it comes to being able to magically summon your various weapons and armor that happen. Although I don't believe they don't gain magical until later, and then at 6th level you can finally take an additional attack action. Is that what it is? Star Seeker, you can gain additional wizard spells that become very useful. They actually have a really awesome 18th level feature where you can trap spells, creatures, or magic items within this like magical tome thing you have, and then you can release them later. I thought that was a really cool feature. I would have liked to see that maybe bumped a little bit earlier. Some of them do a better job. You know, one thing I always look at for new classes and subclasses is, are you front loading all the cool stuff? Because yes, obviously we want to design for all 4 different tiers of play, but let's face it, most D&D games are not going to get to tier 3, let alone tier 4. So I really want to see you have fun, actionable stuff in those first 2 tiers. Some of them do a better job of that than others in terms of making that fun content a little bit earlier. If I'm looking at it going, oh, wow, this is a really cool feature, too bad nobody sees it until like 8th level, then that's a bummer for me whenever I'm reviewing the thing. Starlight Idol does a pretty cool, I think is one of the better ones. It adds the Bard effect and it gives you cool abilities you can do right when you transform and charm people. And it has a cool scaling effects where you can do additional like dance numbers, and then you can do additional damage to people that you charm. And then the 18th level ability is, as an action, you do a performance, and that person gets to take an immediate turn. John, are you a Fire Emblem fan? Because that is exactly what I believe it's the Dancer class in Fire Emblem does, is straight up lets you target another person with your turn and just let them take that turn again. Now that's works in Fire Emblem because you're controlling like 12 different people. As a single, if I'm controlling a single person, I would feel like that would be kind of sucky for me to use my entire turn to just let somebody else take an extra turn. But I guess if you have, you know, fun bonus actions and you're playing a super support role, then you could definitely see yourself doing that. But probably one of my favorite subclasses, that one, of the Dark Magical Girl, of course, just because she's got some really cool powers. And then, you know, the complaint I would make for the usual time right here is like, oh, well, you know, couldn't this be a subclass of this? Couldn't this be a subclass of that? And the designer's like, yeah, maybe. So let's create those subclasses, which I love. So now we get these new subclass options based on existing classes. We get one for the Barbarian, the Fighter, the Monk, the Sorcerer, the Rogue, and the Sorcerer, Rogue, Monk, Barbarian, Fighter. That's all 5. Now, for all of them, you gain a new transformation ability as a bonus action, except for the Barbarian, where because your bonus action Raging, now it just happens when you rage. Instead, you gain all these new abilities, but the idea is you gain a new powerful form that you transform into. Some of them work better than others. The Fighter is kind of lame. You basically, again, just become an Eldritch Knight. Is that right? Eldritch Knight? Where you can kind of, you know, summon, except in this case, you can summon all of your armaments, but you don't really get any benefits from that other than you can't really truly be disarmed or anything. But they don't even become magical until like 10th level, for example, and you don't get a cool ability until 7th level. So I thought that was kind of a misstep there, although I do love the description here. Regardless of how one becomes a Knight's Magicka, the people who are known for their incredible fashion sense and ability to fight bloody battles while looking absolutely fabulous. Now, this is Kyrie's mystical tome. Tome. I always fuck that up. Tomb and tome. Which means she is present as commentary sidebar, which is very funny and enjoyable. That I like reading about. These little white sidebars here. And yet, I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more of that. And I was prepared to ding the designer on that as an official con. But then as we got to the second half of the book, she actually starts propping up a little bit more. So she was quiet for a little bit, and then we ended up seeing a lot more of her, to where I literally deleted that as a complaint of mine. But still, I feel like there's a couple of things where I read where it got a little too like personality infused descriptions, and I feel like, okay, it's funny and I enjoy that, but that should have been taken out and put in as a sidebar commentary from that in-universe designer versus having it be in the actual text itself. That's kind of a minor complaint. Would have been a bigger one had I seen the designer doing that more, but instead it's kind of just in a few places, and then she's back to being in a sidebar commentary, which I did enjoy. The monk is probably one of the most interesting ones because it does something I don't think I've ever seen before, where it has you be able to enter these different forms, and unlike every other class and subclass, this time you have 4 different forms you can enter, which all have different effects, like you gain extra damage, or you gain resistance, or additional AC, some kind of buff. But the crazy thing is, when you transform, you can obviously pick a different one, and then once you start at 6th level and beyond, you can actually gain different abilities by changing forms. You can kind of string them together in a certain order, and then different things happen. That's really cool, and really makes you pay attention to like how you're twinning your forms together and all that. And they keep getting more forms and more combos of forms together. So it really unlocks almost like a skill tree of cool things to have happen, which is really interesting. I was really excited when I read about the Rogues Thieves Phantasm, because I was like, oh, is this a Phantom Thieves reference? That's from Persona. And it's actually kind of a weird little, you've got like a ribbon dagger that can grapple people, and I didn't really see the connection there. Not bad, but just wasn't quite interesting me. And then the Sorcerer one is also a little bit more boring. It's basically just all passive stuff. Like you gain better cantrips and better dispel magic and counter spells. So some of them work better than other. I thought Barbarian one was pretty good. But they all do a pretty good job of at least taking into effect the base class with the Magical Girl subclass. Although the transformation itself, I must complain about. And this is an important thing that obviously is both the class and the subclasses. The transformation, some of them are... they last for, so it's always a bonus action to transform. And they last for either minutes or hours, equal to your proficiency bonus or your wisdom modifier, or a combination of the two. And maybe the designers come up with a way to track that. Some of them are literally hours. Maybe if it's not as big of a deal, it's hours, like the fighter one. And others, when it's like the monk or the rogue, where you gain like really powerful abilities, it only lasts for minutes. But the problem is, it's not use-based, it's time-based. So it's literally just available for that long, and you end it as a bonus action, fall unconscious, or die. And then it says, any expended transformation time is restored after completing a long rest. So, I think there is precedent for this happening before in base D&D. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are certain things. I mean, obviously, if you upscale certain spells, they last for, 10 hours or 24 hours or something. But otherwise, it's basically up to the player and the DM to keep track of time. And that's not something as a DM I ever want to have to keep track of, or have to constantly remind the player of, is like, oh, hey, the player's like, well, how long have I been in this form? And the DM has to be like, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, because that matters to the player. But as the DM, you're not wanting to really keep track of, at least I'm not keeping that minute track of time in every single session and on that small of a basis. So I did not like the fact that you're basically ticking down. It's like having a, like on a video game, you've got like a buff counter, and it's like, all right, this lasts for 1 hour, and then it starts ticking down the clock. Like, we don't have that in D&D where we can keep track of things, and nor is it supposed to run, anywhere close to like real world time or anything, because we're all, it's sped up every other case, and then of course it's turn based when we get to combat. So I was not, and obviously, you've got spells that last, 1 minute, which is like, okay, this is for combat. 10 minutes, which is like, okay, this is for combat, plus maybe a couple rooms while we're exploring in D&D. Maybe you can get 2 combat encounters off with this thing if we get them close enough together. An hour, which to me is like, well, this basically lasts until our next short rest. Or, longer than that, which is, 8 hours or something, which is the adventuring day, basically. So those are the times that I'm used to working with. I don't like this, hey, I can turn it on for, 15 minutes and then turn it off. And then the player and DM has to keep track of that. We have a use-based rules for the most part, where it's like you have this many uses of the thing and then those uses are restored. I would have much preferred if we had done that with this transformation aspect, is said, hey, let's just say you get this many uses. It lasts for this set amount of time every time, maybe 1 minute, and then maybe as you level up, that can be increased. Maybe when you hit 6th level, it lasts for 10 minutes. Maybe when you hit like tier 3, it lasts for an hour or something. That's one way you can scale it. But then give me limited uses that you can transform before you need to long rest, or maybe make it a short rest based thing, whatever you want to. Short rest probably wouldn't make sense because it's supposed to last longer. So that's the big complaint I would make. And unfortunately, it is a big complaint because that's such a core part of the character class and all of these subclasses is how the transformation thing works. So I really didn't like the fact that it's basically purely time, unless I'm reading things wrong, but it sounds like it's just purely time based that the player and the DM have to keep track of, which I am not a fan of keeping track of any of those time based things. That's that nebulous. That can really be like, hey, I think I've been in there for 23 minutes or something. Like, okay, just let's say like it lasts an hour or so. That's just way, way, way easier to keep track of. Beyond that, we get to some new feats and spells and magic items. I thought these were all very well done. I'm not going to really go through them point by point like I did the other stuff, but there's some cool ideas in here that give you some, extra flavoring of the magical girl stuff. And it feels, decently well balanced from what I can say. I like all the new features, the lance ability to summon a bunch of, mystical lances that you can either use as melee attacks or you can hurl at people. You can summon this magical bow, which is apparently based on the designer's D&D character they've played, that has a really interesting scaling mechanic where using different high-level spell slots let you add attack rolls or damage rolls at a certain gradient as you level up, which is all pretty nice. I love that we get artwork for all our new Magical Girl items, which are all very cool ideas and new features that, again, build off, things that maybe they would have. So it's all a bunch of sparkly stuff and magic stuff that I appreciated quite a bit to have. And then even magical artifacts, which are very nifty to have. Some of them have ascensions and just multiple, just crazy powerful abilities, essentially legendary artifacts. So all of that is very well appreciated and really cool. And we get not only artwork, but player handouts to go with all of these as well, which is located at the very end here. Look at how awesome these look. Now, granted, the font is kind of hilarious because you can barely get like anything in there, but I appreciate that the designer's like, no, damn it, I want the artwork to be front and center. Like, all right, fair enough. Somebody who runs a BTT, though, I don't know how well I would use the actual cards themselves versus, the in-engine way of displaying the art and the item, but I love that the attempt was made there. And then look at this artwork for all of these stat blocks, which these are fun because it's an example of all of the major archetypes for all of the Magical Girl creatures. Somewhere around, was it Challenge Rating 4? We've got these. Then we've got the big ones, the two kind of main characters that take place in this universe, which is Bridget and Rainy. Who is like the personification of darkness, and literally the descriptions that I'm reading in the history just sounds like your typical like 90s JRPG bullshit to me, which, hey, that no like sass, like I love 90s JRPG bullshit. Like I grew up on that. I eat that shit up with a spoon, like, and basically it still kind of continues to this day in a lot of different ways. But I thought the designer like absolutely nailed the melodrama and all of the different tropes and cliches and things that I expect to find. I was very satisfied to see that all here. It doesn't try to shy away from what the genre is and what people like about it too, which I think is an important point to make without being like eye-rollingly lame or something. So I think that's really a lot of what I was looking for too, is how best you take a lot of that anime stuff and put it into D&D, which are not, they have a lot of like cross-pollination there, and yet I could see those also being very two distinct camps where people are like, I don't want anything about this in my like gritty, grim, dark, D&D universe, and that's fair. That's totally fair. But if you did, or if you wanted maybe at least the mechanics of that ability, like to be able to enter this transformation state where you become more powerful, which is, frankly, a staple of the superhero genre as much as anything else, then I think this could absolutely be used, just, reflavored, obviously, slightly into different ways. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for the Mystical Tome. Pro, all new Magical Girl class with 5 subclasses. I honestly thought it was fairly well designed on paper. It's always hard for me to review, classes because I think that requires a lot of design fine-tuning, but I have reviewed a lot of stuff. I have played a lot of D&D, and nothing in here that I read felt, super imbalanced or really jumped out at me as being worrisome. At the same time, it also felt like it would be decently fun to play. You get a lot of cool abilities right at the beginning between those, magical incantations that help you be a really good support class. You're a pure caster, so you've always got that to fall back on. You're like, I can just cast a whole bunch of freaking spells. And then you've also got on top of that your very well play defining subclasses that really help determine, are you going to be more of a frontline fighter? Are you going to be more of a utility caster? Are you going to be more of a supporter? All of those things can be yours with the different subclass options. Pro 5 subclasses for existing classes using the Magical Girl ideas, which is just really great. I actually think they're not as interesting as the Magical Girl class itself, but I appreciate that the attempt was made, and some of them do work fairly well. I think the Barbarian and the Monk specifically are very cool and have different really cool things happening. Sorcerer and Fighter are a little boring, at least in the front loading, and then Rogue is kind of okay if I did my overall review of them. But I like the fact that they exist, and the fact that the designer's like, hey, I'm gonna do this because that's something that I'm sure Eric's gonna ding me on. No, I don't think is to say, what if you just wanted to take, you didn't want to fuck around with the whole new big class, and that's a harder thing for a DM, any DM at the table to wrap their heads around. Instead, hey, I just want to play. I'll play one of the existing classes and go with all the balance we've already got, and then just let me play this little bit of extra flavoring as a subclass. I know a lot of DMs would let that go a lot more than an entirely new class, so I think that is a huge thumbs up. Pro 10 new feats and 10 new spells inspired by the Magical Girl class. Again, no complaints here. They all seemed like very fun and well designed and really fit the theme quite well. Over a dozen magic items and legendary artifacts, and all of them have art and player handouts, which is just incredible. So I love the attention to detail there. Bestiary with sample stat blocks for each Magical Girl archetype, and a professional layout and design with beautiful artwork. That is a lot of pros for one book. Probably up there with some of the most pros I have given a book, which shocked me because I didn't expect to come into this being as blown away as I am. The only con I have is basically my whole rant about the magical transformation itself, which is I don't like that they are time-based. I think they should have been use-based. In other words, you have this many uses, they last for this set amount of time, and then you get to recharge them on a long rest or something. I would love to hear the designer's thoughts on why they specifically made it more time-based, and maybe I'm just a grump when it comes to not wanting to keep track of that kind of thing. But that would be, if I were looking at this and a player came to me and said, hey, I really want to run this class or this subclass, that is probably something I would change overall and say, okay, we can keep everything as is, but I'm going to make it so you have this many uses and it just lasts for, let's say an hour or something. Or maybe in the early levels it lasts for 10 minutes, and then as you get to like tier 2, then it lasts for an hour or something. We can figure out a balance thing from there. But I don't want either the player or the DM or both of us to keep track of the amount of time that ticks away from that little buff, because we are not a video game. Final verdict, Kyrie's mystic tome of magical girls infuses fun anime and JRPG ideas and concepts into D&D through well-balanced mechanics and a ridiculously comprehensive suite of subclasses, feats, items, and stat blocks. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.